Another common application of a linear function is simple interest. So hopefully we remember that to find simple interest, we're just going to take the principal, which is the amount invested or the amount borrowed, times the rate, and make sure that your rate is in a decimal form, and then times the time in years. So if we end up with, say, something like 6 months, that would be 6 out of 12 months, or half of a year. So time in years, and this is the investment or what you borrowed. And of course, I stands for interest. So that's what I'm going to be using down here. Now, if you'll notice, I've created a table for you. Some people really like using a table because it helps them to organize their thoughts and all of that in order to write these equations. So notice I've written principal, rate, and time. And we know that if I took principal times rate times time, I would get interest. So if you'll notice here, I am borrowing $8,000 total from a friend and a bank. So some from the friend, some from the bank. So notice I've labeled it bank and friend. The bank charges the equivalent of 5% simple interest. So I'm going to fill in my table as I go. The bank has a rate of 5%, which is 0.05. So again, I took that 5% and turned it into a decimal, which means I took the decimal 2 places to the left, so that's 0.05. Your friend gives you a better rate equivalent to 1%, so a better rate of 1% because you're borrowing, but that rate is 0.01. The total interest after 1 year, so the time seems to be 1 year for both accounts. And the other value they give us is the total interest. And notice I haven't given you a place to put that, but we know that this would be interest to bank, and this would be interest to friend. So it's starting to come together here, but we have a very glaring omission here, something that we have not filled in yet. And that's where this 8,000 is going to come into play. I know that the total is 8,000. So what I'm going to do is something called assign my variables. I'm going to say that X is going to be the amount of money that I borrowed from the bank. And I could have chosen that for the bank or the friend. I chose it for the bank. Now, if X is how much I borrowed from the bank, what did I borrow from my friend? Well, let's say X was 1,000. That means 7,000 from my friend. What if X was 2,000? That means 6,000 from my friend. How am I finding those numbers? Because I know they add up to 8,000. So if I take 8,000 minus whatever I borrowed from the bank, I get what I get from my friend. So that means this is 8,000 minus X. Now, if you have a question like this on an assessment, I'm going to ask you to assign the variables. So you either make this table so I know exactly what represents what, or you say X represents interest to bank, and 8,000 minus X represents interest to friend. That is what I mean by assigning a variable. You're telling me what X represents and what represents the second amount. So I filled in my table, but guess what? I still don't have anything that's going to create an equation yet. So I need to think about how this is going to work. I know that if I take the interest from the bank and if I take the interest from the friend, so down here I'm going to put interest from bank plus interest from friend, or to friend, I guess, those should both be twos. That's going to equal $280 because they told me that. The total interest after a year was $280. So what can I write in for the interest? Let's change that to the bank and to the friend. The interest to the bank is found by taking the principal times rate times time. So that would be X times 0.05 times 1. And the interest to the friend would be taken by principal times rate times time, which is 8,000 minus x times 0.01 times 1. So now I have an equation that I can solve because I've taken these values and multiplied them and these values and multiplied them. And so now it's just a matter of just doing the work, which we've done a lot of practice with. So let's go ahead and take x times 0.05 times 1. And on this one, again, I'm going to sort of ignore the 1 because the 1 doesn't change anything. If I take anything times 1, I get whatever I started with. So really I'm taking 0.01 times 8,000. So 80 minus 0.01x equals 280. So from here, of course, I'm going to combine like terms, which means I'm going to take my 0.05 and my 0.01 to get 0.04x plus 80 equals 280. I'm going to subtract that 80 from each side to get 0.04x equals 200. Again, feel free to show the minus 80 if you would like to. But it's not required for me. As long as you're doing just one step on each line, I'll be able to follow it. And I'm going to end up, when I divide by 0.04 on each side, I get x equals 5,000. Now, a lot of people are like, okay, good, I got an answer for x, I'm done, x is 5,000. But remember, I'm looking for the amount that I borrowed from each thing, the friend and the bank. So I've just found x, which is the bank, and I would need to find the other one. So now I'm going to show my work on 8,000 minus x, which is 8,000 minus 5,000, which is 3,000, which means, again, I would write a sentence, which I'm not going to do right now for the sake of time, but if you were doing this for an assessment, you would say, I borrowed $5,000 from the bank and $3,000 from my friend. Here's a question for you to try on your own, but before I set you loose, if you feel up to it, go ahead and get started. But before I set you loose, I want to talk to you about how things might get a little tricky right here with this 9 months. So I want to talk to you about that first. We know in this case it says you pay back the friend after 9 months and the bank after 2 years. So the time for the bank is 2 years. The time for the friend is 9 months. So don't put 9 there because remember, time is in years every time. So if it's 9 months, I'm going to take 9 months divided by the 12 months that are in a year, and that's going to give me 0.75 because it's 3/4 of a year. So from this point, I'd like you to press pause, go ahead and find the equations, make sure that you either fill in the table or assign your variables, either one works just fine, and then find your final solution. When you're done, press play to see how you did. Okay, again, in this case, I'm looking at the bank charges 5.5% interest. So 0.055, make sure you move that 2 decimal places. Your friend gives you a 2.5% rate, so 0.025. The principal is a total of 10,000, so again, I have to assign which one is which. So it doesn't matter which one you do. One of them is x and the other is 10,000 minus x, because that would give me the total interest or the total principal borrowed from each source. Again, we're given 735 total in interest, so I'm going to do this exactly like I did the last one. I'm going to take x times 0.055 times 2, which is the principal from the bank. I'm going to add to that and make sure it's in parentheses, 10,000 minus x times 0.025 times 0.75. And that is the principal from the friend, and I know the total principal, I'm sorry, the interest from the friend, and the total interest is 735. Now, this one is a little bit harder So we're going to look at, the first one's not too bad, because I'm just going to take 2 and I'm going to take it times 0.055, and that's going to give me 0.11x. Oops. The other one, here's what I suggest doing. I have 2 values on the outside this time. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take 0.025 times 0.75 first, which gives me 0.1875. And I'm going to take that product times the 10,000 minus x that I have in parentheses. So I'm just writing one extra step just to make the math a little bit easier. So 0.11x, and now I'm going to distribute. So if I take that times 10,000, obviously it's just going to move the decimal place, 187.5 minus 0.01875x equals 735. Now before I start getting too crazy, I want to combine like terms. So I've got 0.11x minus 0.01875. And so on total x's, I have 0.09125x plus 187.5 equals 735. Let's subtract the 735 minus 187.5. So my new equation, running out of room here, is 0.09125x equals 547.5. And now I'm going to divide that by 0.09125, and I get x equals 6,000. Just like on the last one, I've solved for one of the 2 funds, but now I need to solve for the other. So I'm going to show that I took 10,000 minus x, which is 10,000 minus 6,000, which is 4,000. Again, I don't have enough room, or I don't want to waste the time to do it, but I would then write a sentence. I borrowed $6,000 from the bank at 5.5% interest and 4,000 from my friend at 2.5% interest.